Hello everybody, welcome back to Kanga TV, home of North Melbourne fans, and welcome to the first review of season 2025. North Melbourne going down to the Western Bulldogs by 16 points last night at Marvel Stadium. North Melbourne 14-13, 97 to the Bulldogs 17-11, 113. I was pretty disappointed last night, but I've had a sleep on it. I woke up this morning, still disappointed, and it still hurts, but I definitely can approach the game with a lot more of a level head. And over the years, you learn that recording anything straight after a game is usually really emotion charged. So I'm glad I held off on that. Had a chance to sort of collect my thoughts and feelings and can now put them into words for all of you guys, and hopefully we can have a good chat about what happened at Marvel Stadium last night. I want to start this video off by saying it's only round one, and I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater by any means. There was a lot to like about last night's performance against the Bulldogs, and it is clear that we have definitely improved, and there are some individual players and elements to our game that are going to hold us in really good stead moving forward into the future. But I'm hurt. And I think what hurts the most about the performance last night is that we could have and probably should have won that game as well. Not just on paper going into it. We spoke earlier in the week about how many outs the Bulldogs had, and if there was ever a time for us to capitalise on lack of key personnel, if there was ever a time to win, last night probably would have been one of our best opportunities. Yes, they still had the likes of Norton and Darcy playing, and Ed Richards and Bailey Dale both back, and they're both prolific for the Bulldogs, but we absolutely had a chance to win that game. From an external perspective, I think the noise around North Melbourne externally this week will be that there were definitely really positive signs, and we definitely look like an improved side from where we were at the end of last season, and those things are definitely true. But it's also true that internally we probably should have expected to win that game, rightfully so, and we should have won it. I think that it was an opportunity gone begging, and it's not just about looking at it from the outset, but it's looking at it from the way the game developed. We let the Dogs get out to a really big jump on us early. Our first 10 minutes were pretty horrendous. We looked shaky. We looked a bit like deer in headlights. We were making really poor decisions. We just couldn't seem to settle. We looked really jittery. And then even when we did steady the ship, about 10 to 12 minutes into the first quarter, our decision-making still wasn't ideal. And when we were able to move the ball into our forward 50, we just were so inaccurate in front of goal, and we weren't capitalising on our opportunities. And that obviously came back to bite us in the end. We were resilient, and we were able to respond in the second and third quarters, and those quarters were just sublime. Some of the best football I've seen from North Melbourne for a really, really long time. Head into the final break, we definitely had the momentum. At the end of both the second and third quarters, we scored goals after the siren, which is very foreign for any North Melbourne fan. It's usually us conceding goals in red time. So for us to score a goal in both the second and third quarters after the siren was massive for us. 10 points down heading into the final quarter, and then to concede 3 goals in the first 5 minutes of the fourth quarter, including the first goal 15 seconds into the quarter, kills you. And I think that's almost for me worse than the first quarter. The first quarter was flat, and we took some time to adjust and to get ourselves into the game, but we were resilient and we did fight back. So then for us to have all the momentum and have all of the buzz heading into the final quarter to fall so flat within the first 5 minutes and basically give it up, then that I think was a pretty hard pill to swallow. But like I said, a lot to like, and there's definitely positive signs there. It's only round one. There's 23 games left of the season, and I have no doubt we'll be following every single one of those here on the channel. I think from a personal perspective, I was probably really upset as well. I guess it comes part and parcel with the pressure that you put on yourself. I started this YouTube channel in October last year. This was the first AFL game that would be covered here on the channel, and from my perspective, everyone knows I'm super bullish and I'm super positive, and that is usually the way I have an outlook on football in general and about North Melbourne, and so maybe an element of it was me wanting to have a good result so that we could have the dream start for 2025, not just for North Melbourne but also here on the channel and everything we've created so far. It's been such a great space, but that's part and parcel of it. It comes with the territory. Let's have a look at a few key pointers from last night's game, both things that went right and things that went wrong. We'll unpack it a little bit more, and hopefully by the end of this video you're feeling a lot better about the result and about last night, and we can just process it and move on to round 2. In terms of the general play and the side as a whole, we won a lot of the key stats. We won the disposals. We had a really strong disposal efficiency. We actually beat the Bulldogs disposal efficiency 73 to North 74. We were efficient going inside 50. So we definitely had a lot of the football, but we weren't doing anything with it half the time. The Bulldogs, when they got the ball, they were able to transition the ball from coast to coast pretty quickly, pretty seamlessly. They just sort of poked holes in our side all the way along the ground, and that is one of a few issues that have remained over the past few seasons, and nothing changes if nothing changes. There's got to be a way where we can stop this run and this easy carry of the ball and flow of ball from the opposition. And we saw it in the second and third quarters when our team defence lifted. The side just looks stronger as a whole. And one thing that I have noticed with the club, and it's been spoken about a lot, is not just the easy transition from one end of the ground to the other, but the lack of pressure from the middle of the ground when the ball is heading towards our defensive 50. The midfielders don't really help out the back line, and it results in easy uncontested marks to the opposition key forwards inside our forward 50. But one thing I found super impressive about last night, particularly in that second quarter, is when the ball was trapped in the Bulldogs defensive 50, I found a lot of our midfielders were pushing up the ground and they were actually tackling and getting involved in the play in the defensive 50. It resulted in a lot of holding the ball free kicks. It resulted in a lot of congestion. It allowed our defenders to have time to move the ball outside of our defensive 50, and that was something that really, really impressed me last night as a team when we took that step up and when we kind of had that intensive edge and we kind of lifted. Our whole game plan almost just changed, and we did get our hands on the ball a lot. And like I said, a lot of the time it went nowhere. But on the flip side, when we got our run and handball game going, we looked just about unstoppable. There was a passage of play in the second quarter. We won it out of the back line and we moved the ball so well to the other end of the ground. Cam Zurhaar got his hands on the ball, kicked it over the top to Nick Larkey. Unfortunately, it resulted in a behind. But that was just so impressive from North. And I think we've seen that run and carry and that explosive North ball. We saw it against Fremantle last year. We saw it against Collingwood as well, but it wasn't sustainable. We weren't able to match it defensively when the pressure came the other way. And an element of that was true last night. Obviously, the fourth quarter was a really good example of that. However, I do think that we were able to steady the ship a lot more in game and a lot better in game than we did previously. I felt like there was a better balance between the offense and the defense. And so I think that was definitely one thing I took out of the game last night. And I think that's something that will allow for long-term sustainable success, is the more we're able to balance that offense and defense. But now it's just about us needing to move the ball a little bit quicker when we do get ball in hand, and allow ourselves the best scoring opportunity, and the forwards the best opportunity to work into space, the same way we allow teams to do that when they move the ball in the opposite direction. I mentioned Cam Zurhaar before, and I want to just go straight to him. In my mind, Cam Zurhaar's game was symbolic of the club as a whole and our performance on field as a whole. Cam Zurhaar was excellent last night, and we brought in Jack Darling over the off-season, and when we did, we knew that Cam Zurhaar would likely be the best beneficiary. He's often played on the second best key defender of the opposition, hasn't allowed him to get into space, hasn't allowed him to just kind of do what he needs to do. Last night, he looked fantastic. He looked so threatening up forward from a positioning perspective and from a marking perspective. He had 6 marks inside forward 50. He had plenty of opportunity and plenty of shot on goal, but resulting in 1 goal for, not good enough. It's really not good enough. And he has signed a big 5-year contract, and we did see in the pre-season simulation what he can do when he's at his dangerous best. And it kind of feels like he's been a tease for most of his career, because he played so well last night, and his game probably ends up being a 6 out of 10 when it should have been a 9 or a 10 out of 10. He has the ability to be the game breaker, and he would have been the match winner last night. If he kicks straight, even if he converts 2 or 3 of those goals, we win the game. And yes, if you want to look at the positive side of it, look how much more opportunity he's getting. He's getting in the right positions. He has a lot more room to move, and he's getting a lot more shots on goal. But now it's about converting. And I know we always talk about the preseason and you kind of don't know how much to take out of it and how much to read into it. But for Cam Zurhaar and for the team as a whole, we probably should have won that game against West Coast in Bunbury a couple of weeks ago, and inaccuracy hurt us. And you wonder how much of that is brought into this game when it was fine in the preseason. All we were saying was, oh, it's all good. Like, it's just preseason. And if we kick straight, we win it. You could probably say the same thing about this, but now we're in round 1 and now we're playing for 4 points. And if we had kicked straight, we win it. That is, for me, a really, really disappointing thing. I really feel like Cam Zurhaar has such potential this year, and we have seen how much better our forward line is functioning with the inclusion of Darling, and we'll get to Darling's game later as well. But for Cam Zurhaar, I think he's got to be better than that. He's, like I said, on a 5-year deal. He's probably on pretty decent money as well, and you do look at the game that he had and the dangerous elements of his game, and he just wasn't able to convert, and that killed us in the end. That, honestly, he was the difference. It just wasn't the right difference last night, and unfortunately he's just going to have to absorb the pressure. Like, a lot of them are going to have to absorb the pressure and stand up, because we need guys like him to shine if this club is ever going to move forward and turn the improvement into wins. One more thing I do want to touch on before we move to the positives, because there was a lot to like and there is so much excitement and so much to be optimistic about with this North Melbourne side moving forward. But the decision to sub Will Phillips out of the game, I think, was the wrong decision last night. Will Phillips didn't have a lot of the footy, but I was just so impressed every time he did get his hands on the football. He had 11 touches, going at 91% disposal efficiency. I felt really calm when he had ball in hand. I just trusted him. I knew that he was going to make the right decision, and 99% of the time he did. His work rate off the ball was just as good. 4 clearances, 3 tackles. He was sort of in everything. So late into the third quarter, the decision to sub him out of the game was one that baffled me and one that I disagree with. I also don't think that Darcy Tucker was the right sub of choice. Your sub needs to be someone who has the ability to change a game. And while Paul Curtis and LDU combined in that final quarter and were pretty much our only hope to get us back into the game for majority of that last quarter, Darcy Tucker's a role player. It's not about, say what you want about Darcy Tucker, about his disposal, about his game, whatever. It's the kind of player that he is. Yes, he played on the wing. Yes, he can run all day. Sure, no worries. But he's not the match winner. And that's nothing against him. He's just not the guy that's going to be the difference for us when the game is on the line. So when you need to inject something different into the game, be it pace, be it hard tackling pressure, be it a bit of explosiveness, you want someone to come fresh off the bench to give you that into the side, to really give you that step up when the game is there to be won. And so for Darcy Tucker, and like I said, it's got nothing to do with him. It's just the fact that he's a role player. He's not the match winner. And it was glaringly obvious taking Will Phillips out of the game that both taking him out and bringing Tucker on as the sub was probably the wrong decision, and I think we need to look to rectify that ahead of next week. I think Will Phillips needs time. The likes of Constanti and Robert Hansen Jr. both did some really nice things last night. Constanti was really, really good defensively. I really liked the pressure that he brought. I really liked the 1%ers. He went for the 3rd, the 4th attempt, constantly making a contest. I really liked the defensive element of his game. On the flip side, I thought Robert Hansen Jr., if we can start to get more game into him and if we can get him around the ball more often, he actually really could be anything. He looks like he's developing really nicely. He played that high half forward role and he pushed more into the middle of the ground. And when we got him around the ball, I was excited. I just thought, what is this guy going to do? He had a couple of really nice running bounces as well. Plenty to like about those two guys, and I think put them in the same category as Phillips. If you just play these guys and give them all an opportunity, just give them some consistency and some time to play the game, it's only going to come back in a positive way for us. So I do really feel for Will Phillips, because I don't think subbing him out was the right decision. I also feel bad for Darcy Tucker, the sub in his 150th game, and probably the wrong player to have as the sub for the game. Like I said, it's just about what he brings, and we definitely needed something different to kind of give us that edge heading into the last quarter, and unfortunately, it just didn't work. Moving on, let's talk about some positives, because there was a lot to like about this North Melbourne side last night. Let's start with the captain, Jai Simpkin. Crazy to think that both he and Nick Larkey went into this game under an injury cloud. When push came to shove last night, they were 2 of our best players. Jai Simpkin has really stepped up and really impressed me since coming into the role of solo captain at North Melbourne. His performance last night was one of the best I've seen from him. He really led strongly from the front. He got his hands on the ball a lot in the opening quarter, but he was a little bit fumbly. However, when he did actually get his game going. He was pretty damaging. He had 30 touches. He had a goal. He had 7 tackles, 4 clearances. I really, really liked what I saw from him. And I think that, like I said, he clearly is responding well to the responsibility. He's stepping up the way we need a leader to. And I was super impressed with him. Equally impressed with Nick Larkey. 5 goals. He's the ultimate professional, Nick Larkey. I couldn't love him enough. And he's such an important part to this side. And the inclusion of Jack Darling not only helped Cam Zurhaar, like I mentioned before, but it even alleviates a little bit of pressure off Nick Larkey, because Nick Larkey wasn't the target every single time he went into the forward 50, but Jack Darling is so physical. There were actually times where he did have 2 guys on him and he just attracted the opposition defenders, and it allowed Nick Larkey a bit of space. He played so well last night, Nick Larkey, and he was obviously just about a dead eye in front of goal, converting with the 5 goals there. He was a really, really big part of why we were able to remain so competitive in the game. Let's talk about Jack Darling as well. Jack Darling, our forward line is just completely different with Jack Darling in there. Obviously, he kicked his goal last night, but it's more about the work and the opportunities that the forwards around him have. Larkey kicked 5 goals. Zurhaar had plenty of shots on goal. Like I said, it's just for him to convert. The likes of Harry Sheasel, Paul Curtis, and Luke Davies-Uniacke also chipped in on the scoreboard. Jack Darling, though, I mean, I probably glaze him a lot because I loved him when he was at West Coast, and I've been on him and really hot on him since he came to North Melbourne, since the second he walked through the door. But the two of us have spoken about how he feels so at home and so welcome at North Melbourne already. And he played 298 games at West Coast. He will play his 300th game for North Melbourne next week. And that goal celebration with the crowd last night, as a fan watching, made me feel like he just loves and appreciates this club so much already. You could see it. He went straight to the crowd. He went straight to the North Melbourne fans after he kicked that goal and just celebrated with them. And you can just tell how at home and how appreciative he feels. And that is such a nice feeling as a fan, because when you're watching that, you feel like you've just adapted everything that we are about already, and you love this club already as much as we love this club. So I really was thrilled for Jack last night. I was thrilled for us, and the way, like I said, our forward line just looks completely different. We are functioning so much better up forward. We look a lot more dangerous. We have a lot more genuine options. Everyone's allowed to play their role, has the time, the space, the room. So that was just awesome, I think, for us. Unfortunately, probably can't say the same about Luke Parker and Caleb Daniel. I didn't think Caleb Daniel had a really good night at all last night. He made a lot of mistakes and a lot of uncharacteristic mistakes. I don't know if that was the nerves facing his old club straight up. I don't know if it was just adjusting to a new game plan, but I thought that while he did have a good amount of the footy, he failed to really have a big impact. Parker was probably the same. Parker was fine. Parker did his job. I just don't think that he had the impact that we probably were hoping for him to have. One player that did really impress me out of the middle last night, though, was Tom Powell. You can see why the hype is so big around him, both internally and externally. This is Tom Powell's breakout season. He, especially in that first quarter, I felt like he was one really trying to generate something. He was trying to create opportunities for us, and he's adaptable. He can kind of go wherever we need him to go and have an impact. He ended up with 27 touches last night, 3 clearances and 8 tackles. I just felt like he had an impact, and he was definitely someone that wanted to create opportunities, like I said, when maybe we were struggling, particularly in that first quarter. And I think for us, if we have him in the side and playing where we need him to, we can kind of move him as the game changes, and we know we're going to get something out of him every single time. Probably not enough from someone like Harry Sheasel. Harry Sheasel had 31 touches last night, but I thought he was probably just not as impactful as he can be normally. I thought LDU took a while to warm into the game, but then his performance in the last quarter when he linked up with Paul Curtis, I think it just showed how important he can be to our side. And when he stepped up and we got more out of him, we just looked like we hit another level when we started to somewhat fight back in that final quarter. That, for me, shows how important it is for us to try and keep him. I just think that he transformed the midfield once again. He also has the potential to be that game breaker when he hits the scoreboard as well. That's the element of the game and of his game that's going to transform him from an elite midfielder that we already know that he is and he can be, into becoming a real superstar and one of the very best in the competition. Paul Curtis, I thought his last quarter was excellent. 3 goals. He was the one keeping us in there. And for someone like Paul Curtis, when he's combining with Cam Zurhaar, neither of them have to shine constantly throughout the game. It's just how they can interchange with each other. And Paul Curtis to step in the last quarter and kick those 3 goals and be able to convert was definitely necessary. Cam Zurhaar, like I said, he played a really, really good game everywhere but in front of goal. So I think there's definitely a lot to like about a lot of those players last night. Someone else that there's a lot to like about was our debutant Finn O'Sullivan. My God, he just looked so comfortable. He did not look out of place whatsoever. He looked like he'd been playing 100 games at AFL level already. Absolutely loved what I saw from him in the back line. He is so fearless. He will just go back with anything and he doesn't even second guess himself. There's not one single hesitation. Goes back with the flag of the ball. He throws himself into every contest. I really liked what I saw from him, and I think that he maybe isn't the flashy half-back player the same way that Colby and Harry Sheasel were. He kind of looked like he was playing slightly more defensively, and we were trying to get Caleb Daniel to play more of that attacking role. Caleb Daniel, I just didn't think was able to have an impact in that role. And like I said, maybe it's round 1 and maybe it was just nerves heading up against his old club for the first time straight up. It's a lot of pressure on him, but as a leader and someone we brought in for his leadership and for his experience, he needs to absorb the pressure and he has to stand up and has to be better. But Finn O'Sullivan, he looked so exciting and he really did look like a Rolls Royce out there 1 game in. So imagine what he's going to be doing when he gets a little bit more footy under his belt. I think he can be such an important part for us. I think he can be a great asset and a great addition to the side. He already was after 1 game. So just imagine what he's going to do as the season goes on. I also really liked the game from Bailey Scott. Bailey Scott's running is second to none. And he chipped in with a nice goal. He kind of looked like he was back at his best, that kind of 2023 form. He can run that wing all day, and he was a really important part when we needed to transition the ball from one end of the ground to the other. He has a really good mix of explosive run and that consistency that we really need when we are trying to steady the ship and move the ball methodically up the ground. So I really, really enjoyed his game as well. I thought he really stepped up. He had a bit of a hit and miss season last year, so for him to refine that 2023 form back in last night's game, I think was so crucial for us. And I think that if we can get him to have consistency and if we can start to get McKercher up to speed, McKercher was fine last night. I just don't think he had the impact I probably was hoping. However, if we can get him running the same way we get Scott running, then they could be a real lethal combination on the wings. I think that will come in time with McKercher. Bailey Scott's the workhorse element of that, and McKercher's the explosive, exciting winger. So I think there's a lot to like, and there's definitely a lot of pieces in the puzzle there to like. As a team and as a whole, our resilience and our fight back in the second and third quarters were really, really impressive. Also, not to concede goals in red time. We were the ones, like I said, kicking goals after the siren at halftime and 3/4 time. We're so used to being the ones conceding on the other end. So that was a really, really positive sign from a North fan, and that's definitely something that I hope we can continue. No more red time goals. No more junk time goals. We're done with them. They don't belong here anymore in season 2025. Hopefully, in that element, we've been able to turn a leaf over. I want to finish off by talking about the backline because I think that discussion is going to be one that carries out throughout the week and is probably going to be a big narrative heading into our game against Melbourne next Sunday afternoon. I thought Aidan Corr on Aaron Naughton was excellent. I think that Aidan Corr absolutely won that battle between the two of them. Unfortunately, Naughton's game was probably glorified in the 4th quarter when both Logue and Comben went down with injury. Corr was forced to move on to Sam Darcy, who is like 3 heads taller than him, and then Aaron Naughton was able to kick 2 final quarter goals. But for the majority of the game, I think Aidan Corr absolutely won that battle. He shut Naughton out of the game. He had an impact, but not on the scoreboard and not anything that was detrimental. I just think that Aiden Corr's game was excellent. He obviously has had a bit of a finger concern throughout the preseason, so for him to come out and stand as tall as he did last night, I thought he was absolutely one of our best and definitely our best defender down there. Charlie Comben, just absolutely not his night. He didn't look good from the get-go, and then, like I said, to end the game on the bench, I think it was an ankle injury potentially, but we'll have to monitor and wait and see what the club says and see if we're able to get him back on the park before we face Melbourne. Griffin Logue, I actually thought he looked really good last night. Pretty solid. It's really hard. Sam Darcy's a really hard matchup for any of our key defenders. They're all pretty undersized as it is, and Sam Darcy is one of the tallest players in the competition. So Griffin Logue definitely had his work cut out for him. I think he did as best as he could, but then to go down with a hamstring injury now is a real big issue. And for a backline that so desperately requires consistency, that so desperately requires cohesion, and that needs time to actually play together, the last thing we need is an injury interrupted backline once again. The backline already is under a lot of pressure and a lot of scrutiny, and an element of us being able to work well as a defense is consistency and time. And we now don't have time once again to let these three key defenders gel. In the second and third quarters, when we saw the midfield push up into the backline and contribute with pressure and tackling, we looked so much stronger and we looked so much more solid. So an element of that is definitely true. But for a team that went without Griffin Logue, its best defender for majority of last season, and Charlie Comben, who just moved into the back line last season for his first run, Aiden Corr is now left alone once again, and this is a massive issue for us. I think Matt Whitlock could be in with a chance here. I want to wait and see how bad these injuries are, and we can talk about this closer to our game against the D's next Sunday afternoon, but I would absolutely look at Matt Whitlock and say this could be your opportunity. I was pretty impressed with him in that match simulation when we played the D's and when we had our intra-club game as well. I think Callan Dawson potentially has an opportunity now if he can step up. Will Dawson, if fit, could also be an opportunity. I don't know if I would go with Whitlock and Will Dawson together to start with. I think having someone like Callan Dawson, who was pretty reliable when he did play last season, would maybe be my first preference, and then go with one of the two of them to begin with and see if that works, especially Aiden Corr and Callan Dawson have played a little bit of footy together in the first half of last season. But like I said, it will probably be a wait and see because we don't know how bad the injuries are for both Logue and Comben. There's also going to be a nervous wait around Jackson Archer. I don't really know what he was trying to achieve when he did knock out Luke Cleary. It was a pretty nasty collision. Cleary knocked out cold, and I understand that the Archer game and name and brand is fearlessness and it's fight, but when you look at the replay, and I've tried to avoid watching it too many times, it's kind of hard to understand exactly what he was trying to do. It kind of looks like he was trying to bump. It didn't really look like he was going for the ball. And so you've got to sit here and think, well, aren't we trying to scrap this out of the game? So again, a nervous wait on Arch as well. And then I think Tristan Sherry is the other one. Tristan Sherry definitely had the better of the ruck battle last night. He was winning everything just about out of the middle. He was great, and definitely beat the battle out with Tim English, but it looked like he had a lower leg complaint coming out of that game as well. So I think it's going to be a pretty nervous wait and it's just not what you want to come out of that game, because there was a lot to like. And I think if we could dig deeper and repeat that performance, then we absolutely have a chance to beat the D's. I think moving into round two, it's just a lot of wait and see. We really just need to process last night, but I just think that we can't overreact, and I have to catch myself out, and me out of everyone just needs to remember it's only round one. And yes, this is real time now, but I'm not prepared to throw the baby out with the bathwater. There was so much good in that game last night, and I really think that if we can start to put the pieces together, then we will win more games than we have in the past few seasons. The improvement is evident, and our resilience and our ability to claw back into that game and to make something of a game that looked like it could have been dead in the first 10 minutes of the opening quarter. There's a lot to like, and that says a lot about how far we've come as a side. The injuries aren't going to help, and I think it's going to be a real nervous wait. I think for me, I don't know how you guys feel, but I think it'll be pretty much a nervous wait to see how many of these players we can get ready and fit and going. We have an 8-day break now. We can recover from the heat. We can hopefully recover from the injuries. We can recover from the heightened emotion, I think, last night going into that game. Like I said, I think there was a lot of people riding a lot of hope on that game, and the result obviously didn't fall our way, but I'm definitely not prepared to give up on this side. I'm really looking forward to seeing how we come out against the D's next week, and if we can back up the good, and if we can find another level with the things that weren't so good, and hopefully pull a first win for season 2025. How do you guys feel this morning? Let me know all of your thoughts in the comments down below. We can also have a chat over on socials if we haven't already. Kanga TV show on Facebook, Instagram, and X. I'm going to just process last night, and I'll be back in the next few days as we move ahead and look on to round 2 against the D's. I'll see you there.